Mr. Safarian, thank you very much for accepting my invitation on Syrian analysis. It's a very pleasure to have you on my channel. You are a senior analyst at the Agora Strategy Group and founder of the Armenian Institute of International and Security Affairs. You're based in Yerevan.
Yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's a privilege for me too.
It's a pleasure too. Actually, Prime Minister Pashinyan went to Sochi on Monday to meet Azerbaijan's Aliyev with the mediation of Russia. Now, before asking you about the results of this meeting, the EU also hosted the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan in October. Are the Russian and the European discourses proceed in parallel, like together, or are they separated from each other when it comes to the mediation to strike a deal between Armenia and Azerbaijan?
That's a very good question for this talk because not only before the war of aggression of Azerbaijan in 2020, but also after it, one of the challenges or unanswered questions is whether the conflict is internationalized as before, because since 1992, it was discussed within the framework of OSCE Minsk Group. There is a Minsk process launched in 1992, just amidst the first Karabakh War. However, the situation is shaky because after the 2020 war in Nagorno-Karabakh, Aliyev has stated that he solved the conflict, and still it is not clear whether Minsk Group remains, whether there is a shared agenda between the three co-chair countries, the United States, Russia, and France, who are chairing that conference, that Minsk process as co-chairmen. Chairman. And the first meeting of the three ambassadors of those three countries after the 2020 war in Baku were discussed a lot because Aliyev insulted, in fact, saying that I'm not waiting for you. You did nothing to solve the conflict, so I solved it, and now I'm the one who should form the agenda and to tell you what is your business. You have nothing to do with the mediation as the conflict is over. So that is why, take into account that after Russian-Ukrainian war in this spring, the relationship, relations between the U.S., the West, and the Russia became very tense, and they entered into a confrontation. All those three countries expressed or reaffirmed their readiness, their commitment as a Minsk Group co-chair to mediate, to facilitate the solution of the conflict. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan was stating that there is no conflict at all. Why Sochi meeting took place? Because you're right. We have at least three separate platforms, formats, where EU on its sides, the US on its sides, and Russia on its sides are trying to be engaged with the process, with the mediation. And as the position of Azerbaijan is still intractable in terms of the start of negotiations, fortunately, we have at least one positive thing. The agenda and the items in all formats are the same. So they are not conflicting. Approaches and positions are different, of course, and the situation is not so favorable for the mediation. Just to repeat, take into account U.S. Russia relations. So that is why we have this migrating format, migrating or shifting process from one capital to another one. And after the last meeting in Washington, where the Secretary of the National Security of Armenia and the presidential aide to Aliyev agreed on timeline and on very concrete issues. There is a timeline till the end of this year to prepare, let's say, so-called peace agreement, and as a separate track to complete or to implement the demarcation between the Armenia and Azerbaijan. As you know, since last year's May, Azerbaijan invaded dozens of square kilometers of the Armenia's internationally recognized borders, the territories. And that is why the situation is very, very unstable. And obviously, all players tries to minimize the risks for the destabilization, in which Azerbaijan is interested very much.
Yeah, it makes me happy to hear that these three discourses are at least having similar agenda for Armenia in the region. Although sometimes I also have the impression that each of these sides have their own I would say geopolitical interest in the Caucasus, and they see the Armenian-Azerbaijani conflict as a gateway to have a foothold in the Caucasus, or a stronger foothold, let's say, in the Caucasus. Now that Prime Minister Pashinyan and Aliyev met in Sochi, what have they concretely achieved in Sochi? Are there any concrete steps that we can expect in the next few weeks?
As I already stated, in Washington, they agreed, Armenia and Azerbaijan agreed to have this timeline and to prepare these documents, comprehensive documents, and to implement demarcation. But you touched upon very important points, which is about approaches of superpowers or great powers. Of course, there are differences, not only because of Ukraine-Russia war, the U.S. and Russia divide, but because Russia states very openly that it's not the good time now to have a comprehensive agreement on all issues, and the conflict should be postponed. And Russia proposed this proposal in the beginning of September, of this September. Of course, September 13 aggression of Azerbaijan against Armenia. This is the second largest attempt to cut so-called corridor. Of course, changed the situation a lot, and the concern and the engagement of the Western powers as well. However, within Russia's initiatives, we have three at least tracks. This is the track of peacekeeping and ceasefire, keeping ceasefire agreement, which is that dates back to 9th November of 2020. We have January 21 format for the blocking of regional communication, because in fact Russia's plan was about deblocking Armenia and the zone of conflict, Nagorno-Karabakh itself, um, from the Azerbaijani-Turkish blockade. And the third format is demarcation commission, um, uh, which was agreed again under the auspice of Russian president at the fall of 2021. This is what I call the shared agenda between Washington, between Brussels, Paris, and Moscow, because all of them, they refer to this agreement. to this agreement made by Armenia and Azerbaijan, of course, with the mediation of Russia's president. However, this situation around Ukraine doesn't allow to appear as a one entity of co-chairman, but as I already described, the items of for all agendas are the same. And Sochi's statement, Sochi's declaration speaks about impeding the process of demarcation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And if you read the text, the sides they reiterated their commitments to the previous arrangements and agreed to facilitate to achieve a solution in very near future. This is what Washington also says, just to implement demarcation till the end of this year. But the problem is Aliyev, the president of Azerbaijan, because he believes that he gains more through the war, and he believes that it's better to prepare for another war, to have a corridor to cut Armenia south, to cut Armenia from Iran, etc. Yeah, and of course there is no need for compromise solution. This is what Aliyev believes.
I
But
mean, if I was in Aliyev's place, and I'm talking in complete objectivity, not from an Armenian background, if I was from in Aliyev's shoes, he is gaining more in true military tools because there is a complete impunity, first of all, for what he does against the Armenians, whether in Nagorno-Karabakh or in Armenia proper. Now, increasingly, both Russia and the European Union are relying on Azerbaijan for certain energy and security issues. Therefore, Azerbaijan feels it is not obliged to go to negotiations. So, if we put both sides together, I think Armenia has more interest in negotiating settlement than the Azerbaijani side. And I'm saying this with complete objectivity, not because I'm an Armenian. And I think there is a high probability that Azerbaijan would sabotage these peace talks the last moment, just like Israel used to do in the past decades. For in the last moment, just before the signature, they back off because they can get more through military means than with diplomatic means. And speaking of Azerbaijan, one of their most controversial demands is the Zangezur corridor, right? So, what is the destiny of this corridor? Is the Armenian side going to accept it? And can Azerbaijan impose this demand on Armenia through diplomatic means? And later, I will also ask about the Iranian position.
oh yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Almasian, for very good observations. In fact, coming from the end, Armenia stated many times that there is no notion of corridor in the text, Zangezur corridor, in the text of 9th of November 2020. And this is right. It speaks about communication, as I said, it's a part of the blocking of the region. And this is Azerbaijani interpretation as if there is symmetric, let's say, provision against the Lachin corridor. In the text, we have very clear term of Lachin corridor for the communication of Armenia and Armenia proper and Artsakh, which is an enclave and has no other surrounding states. So the case of Artsakh is absolutely different of Nakhichevan, but Azerbaijan and Aliyev tries to bring them together to make a parallel that if I provide a corridor which is under the control of Russia in there, then Armenia also should provide such corridor for the communication of Nakhichevan with Azerbaijan. And well, this is a very important question, because it's not the text doesn't speak about control. The text speaks about escorting by Russian FSB, but not about Russian control, or even more about Azerbaijani or Turkish control. But the danger was, and still is, that Russia never reacted to this kind of selective reading when Azerbaijan interpreted this provision of the text as they want. However, I think the good side of Sochi meeting was that before the trilateral discussion beyond closed doors, and in the presence of Vladimir Putin, Armenia's prime minister said that he is not going to discuss the issue of any corridor, and all those communications should be under the sovereignty of Armenia. So Armenia is not going to give up in this issue, and this is a red line for Armenia. And there is no mentioning of such thing, even in the text which was written by Russian lies. So I mean, we believe that still that was, if not one step, but still half step towards closing that issue in that format. And happily, we could achieve this goal in Brussels when Charles Michel, EU Commissioner, openly stated that there will be no extraterritorial corridors, and those communications should operate under the national sovereignties. This is the position of European Union. French government, as the co-chair country, said that this is very old-fashioned idea to have such corridors, and reminds them the Danzig corridor of last century, and that's making sure that they will not support that idea. And finally, Washington also is against to the corridor. So in all three capitals, this issue is closed. Yesterday, or even today, perhaps, the spokesperson of the Russian Ministry of Affairs, Maria Zakharova, was asked a question by Turkish journalists: what about the Zangezur corridor? And Maria Zakharova said, we call that as a route through Armenia. It's not a corridor. So even Russia just refused.
Mr. Safarian, speaking about the Zangezur corridor, we've seen firm statements from Iran rejecting the idea of creating the Zangezur corridor under, let's say, control of Azerbaijan or not. And they say it's a taboo or a red line to change the borders with Armenia, the historic borders with Armenia. And a few weeks ago, we've seen Iranian reinforcements to the north on the borders with Armenia and Azerbaijan to send, I think, a signal to Baku. And at the same time, on Tuesday, Azerbaijan conducted military operations. Some portrayed it or explain it as also directed against Iran. Now, since Prime Minister Pashinyan met with senior Iranian officials just after the Sochi meeting, right? What has been achieved, let's say, in Iran between Armenia and Iran? And do you expect some military clashes probably between Iran and Azerbaijan if Azerbaijan pushes to create such a corridor through military means?
Yeah. Uh, Although official Tehran congratulated Baku for restoring territorial integrity several times, um, we understand that Tehran is doing that just in its own interest, and several times Iranian officials stated that they will not support any change of geopolitical map in the region. Uh, After Azerbaijan's several attempts to cut this corridor through force, and the first let's say, preparation for that was in May 12th of 2021, and the second one was in September. Iran showed some very tough stance regarding to that. Before Azerbaijan's last aggression in September, three leaders, Putin, Erdogan, and Iran's spiritual leader, Khamenei, met in Iran. And Iranian supreme leader openly stated that Tehran will not allow cutting communication, civilizational communication between Armenia and Iran, which goes to the centuries. And now we have very, very interesting illustration of that, because first, after this Azerbaijani aggression, first Iran conducted demonstrative drills next to Nakhichevan, next to the city of Julfa, showing that they will cross the river, and that was the scenario of the military drills. They are ready to cross the border, not only on this side bordering to Armenia, but also on this side bordering to Nakhichevan, not to allow or to prevent this scenario to take place. Secondly, Iranian side inaugurated a general consulate in Kafan, in the southern city of Armenia, which is very close to the area to which Azerbaijan claims as a part of the so-called corridor. So that is Iran's attitude. As I said, statements, quite clear positioning, demonstration of force, and the readiness to use that force to allow or to prevent this Azerbaijani-Turkish scenario. And finally, political military representation in the south, although it's a general consulate. But if you look at the statement made by the general consul, you would say that it's a statement made by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, or at least by the ambassador, because it's not about citizens, it's not about visas, it's not about free movement, it's about the safety of the region, saying that let the people of Syunik or Zangezur know that we are here, and if we are here, they are safe. This is the statement of the general consul made several weeks ago. In fact, Turkey and Azerbaijan are in a minority on that topic, because Washington openly said that they will not welcome that. And in fact, what the US is doing with its engagement in Armenia, or EU is doing with its engagement in Armenia, is preventing some large-scale war of aggression by Azerbaijan, because they know that they are preparing for war. And Secretary Blinken warned Aliyev before, after this aggression, that they have enough proof to say who is the aggressor. And the UN Security Council session also was about this, when first time, that was surprising to us, Azerbaijan was mentioned as the aggressor side. That was a green card to Azerbaijan, and I think Aliyev reads it quite clearly. Although, as we agreed, Aliyev still believes that he will gain more militarily rather politically. And that is why US, EU, and even Moscow, who are not interested in a new destabilization in the region, of course, for different reasons and having different interests here, but at least they agree on that another destabilization in a region which is of strategic importance, especially now, when this is the only way for the exit of Russia to the south, for the EU to the southeast, for others as well. So there is no need for another confrontation. That is why Aliyev is reminded is acknowledged about war crimes. You see different resolutions adopted by different European institutions. You see different warnings coming from Washington and the United States. And as I told in the very beginning of our interview, uh, even Moscow doesn't name it as a corridor. So it shows that Aliyev and Erdogan are alone in this game. Of course, Moscow has another vision, which is, to be frank, is not in the interest of Armenia, because they believe that they will control. De facto controlling this corridor, but Armenia's prime minister said that this route will be operating under the sovereignty of the central government of Armenia, and this is why both Washington, Brussels, and Moscow share this common agenda. First, to prevent Azerbaijan from using a force, and that was stressed in Sochi declaration, in Sochi statement, that borders in the regions are. They will not welcome changes of borders to the force. The parties should respect all these provisions enshrined by the UN Charter, sovereignty, respect mutually sovereignty, territorial integrity, etc., etc. So all this is about preventing this new attack of Azerbaijan, because we see how well they are positioned. According to unverified sources, 2 days ago they stepped back from some positions next to the Jermuk city. We should receive some confirmation for this kind of news yet, but in fact, Azerbaijani leadership is very well acknowledged that sooner or later they have to lose those territories which are annexed right now, de facto annexed right now, and they will not be considered as a part of Azerbaijan's territory, and they will not allow Azerbaijan to waste a time, a years, decades on demarcation. That is why this very short period of demarcation, and demarcation commission, which is operating on the basis of Russia's led negotiations on December of in December of 2021. In fact, this is this commission includes both European presence and Russian presence. And Russia's president, several days ago in Sochi, made a clear statement that they are ready to provide the very detailed map, which are at the disposition of Russia's general staff. And European observation mission also is here to help or to support, to assist this bilateral commission. So just as a sum up, I think all these steps shows that the world, what the message, the major message to Azerbaijan, to Aliyev, is that the conflict of the Nagorno-Karabakh is not over. There is no military solution to the for the conflicts. And as for the internationally recognized territories of Armenia, Azerbaijan received this clear green, the yellow card that he is just on the brink of violating international norms. It has already violated those norms, and Azerbaijani military forces should withdraw from those positions to their initial ones. So I think Zangezur corridor issue is closed for other capitals, but it is not closed for Ankara and Baku yet. They will wait, and they are looking to the favorable situation to seize the momentum and to implement that idea. But as Iran was rightly mentioned, it's the first time, by the way, that Armenia's leader is just traveling to Iran to acknowledge or to discuss the issues of Nagorno-Karabakh with the leadership of Iran. This is because of this new rules of game, Turkish proposal of 3+3 format, which includes three major powers in the region: Russia, Turkey, and Iran, and Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. And if I interpret Pashinyan's um, message of this trip, he says that as Aliyev discusses Nagorno-Karabakh issue or Armenian-Turkish normalization with Turkey, then by the way, he directly said, I think Iran should be acknowledged on details of Sochi discussion. So Pashinyan is engaging Iran in this affairs as well, which makes players more in the game and engage the players who shares the same interest with Armenia on so-called corridor, the blockade, and the major achievement of that visit. As you know, Iranian and Armenian leaders announced that they will double the export of Iranian gas to Armenia, which is a signal to Europe on Iran's readiness to consider it as a diversification
Mm.
for energy supply. And you rightly mentioned Russia's and EU's interest in energy deals with Aliyev. So this is a proposal to Europe that it may consider this
They can deliver gas to Europe also through Armenian,
exactly,
Georgian, and other territories. And I
exactly.
think it's very important to improve relations with Iran. Whether or not we agree with the domestic affairs in Iran is completely
Sure,
irrelevant for
sure.
me. I think Armenia has mutual interests in on geopolitical level with Iran, and we should have improved the relations with Iran long time ago. And I like to refer here to the Syrian-Iranian strategic relations because I was born in Syria, and when Syria was under attack by multinational terrorist groups, supported by several regional and international
Yeah.
powers, Iran came for help to Syria when it was invited. And I think Iran has the capabilities to defend also the southern borders of Armenia. And I'm happy to see that these relations are becoming on a higher level for the sake of our national interests, I would say. I think it's very, very, very interesting chat with you, Mr. Safarian. This was
It
really
was a
amazing.
pleasure for me.
I learned a lot from you. I think
Me
you're
too.
presenting a very solid analysis in a calm manner, which many Armenians lack. Unfortunately, nowadays we are so polarized because of what happened in the past few years, and we disagree a lot, let's say, on the internal affairs. But we also agree on the external, right? We should agree on the national security of Armenia. We should agree how to protect our
I
borders.
think I think that's a very solid ground for at least for pan-Armenian
Yes.
consensus. Armenian homeland, Armenia's statehood, Armenia's national security interest should be the corner, the core of. Sorry, there should be the core
Mhm.
for this consolidation, at least on that
Yes.
basis. And two more things related to Iran. What was announced by Iranian side. Now we are going to launch seriously this north-south communication connecting Black Sea, EU, and Persian and Indian, the Persian Gulf and
Mhm.
the Indian Ocean. So I
Mhm.
mean, this is very very important for both sides, and I'm really happy that having differences, having different political cultures, traditions, and architectures. At least we have this common interest, and it's good to see that um, among Armenians we have fellow Armenians like you. Understanding the importance of all of this, despite of internal or despite of differences on internal affairs. Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Mr. Safarian, thank you very much. First of all, you are a senior analyst at the Agora Strategy Group and founder of the Armenian Institute of International and Security Affairs. Guys, I will put the Twitter link of Mr. Safarian in the description below, and also the institute that he manages and he founded. Please go and follow him. He is presenting us a very, I would say, important insight into Armenia. He resides in Armenia and he understands the internal and also the foreign dynamics of the Armenian politics and also the geopolitics of the Caucasus. Thank
Thank
you
you
very
so much
much.
for this interaction. Thank you.